Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at a question with some pretty big implications for India's future. Can ethically importing business and product ideas actually change the game for their economy?
And, could this approach actually empower Indian entrepreneurs?
Right. I mean, it's a fascinating concept. But before we get ahead of ourselves, maybe we should start with a quick definition. What exactly do we mean by ethical import in this context?
Well, you can think of it as smart integration. It's not about just copying, right?
Yeah.
It's about taking successful ideas from elsewhere and carefully adapting them to fit India's specific needs.
Okay, so like taking inspiration from, say, a recipe, but adding your own special twist to make it truly unique. I like that.
Exactly. And a big part of that is respect. We're talking respect for intellectual property, of course,
Right.
but also, respecting cultural nuances and understanding the regulations.
It's about building those relationships, not just transactions.
Done right. It's about forming partnerships, not just transactions. Yeah.
Got it. So it's about building relationships and adapting those imported ideas to truly work for India. Okay, that makes sense. But now let's get to the heart of it. Why is this so crucial for India's economic future?
Well, think of it like this. Global innovation, it's happening at a breakneck speed, right?
Yeah.
And by thoughtfully importing that cutting-edge tech, those practices, India could potentially leapfrog ahead, in key sectors. Take Industry 4.0, for example.
Industry 4.0. Now, for our listener who might not be up to speed on that, could you give us a quick rundown?
Sure, it's basically the next phase of the Industrial Revolution. We're talking about more automation, more interconnectedness in manufacturing. Think AI-powered systems, advanced robotics, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture.
Now imagine applying all of that to Indian factories.
Okay, so instead of just playing catch-up, India could jump straight to the front lines of advanced manufacturing.
That's the idea.
That's a pretty compelling argument. But wouldn't that require, massive investment and a pretty big shift in, workforce skills?
Absolutely. It needs significant investment in things like infrastructure and training.
Right.
But you have to connect this to the bigger picture, right? The potential benefits are huge. Higher productivity, lower costs, the ability to compete on a global scale. It's about turning India into, well, a manufacturing powerhouse.
So it's a bold move, but with, potentially massive rewards.
Okay.
Okay. Now, beyond manufacturing, what other sectors could see a major boost from ethical imports?
Oh, the possibilities are pretty wide-ranging. Healthcare is one area where India could really leapfrog ahead by importing and adapting cutting-edge technologies like telemedicine, for instance.
I see what you mean. Imagine bringing top-tier healthcare to those remote villages that, have never had access to specialized care before.
Yeah.
That's a powerful example of how this could really improve lives, on a massive scale.
Exactly. And think about renewable energy.
Yeah.
India could bring in those advanced solar and wind technologies to, meet its growing energy needs sustainably.
So not just catching up with global trends, but setting an example for sustainable development. This is starting to feel less like just economic policy and more like a blueprint for a better future. But how does this all translate into real benefits for individual Indian entrepreneurs? Wouldn't they kind of be overshadowed by these big global companies bringing in these new ideas?
Actually, it's quite the opposite. Ethical import can be incredibly empowering for entrepreneurs.
Really?
Think of it as opening doors to a global network of knowledge and expertise.
So instead of starting from scratch, they can kind of tap into those existing best practices and maybe even form collaborations with, those global players.
Exactly. This access to global expertise can help accelerate their learning curve and help them build more competitive businesses. Plus, adopting innovative ideas, it makes them more attractive to investors, both local and international.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs get a leg up, and investors are drawn to the potential for growth and disruption. I'm starting to see how this could fuel a whole new wave of entrepreneurship in India.
And there's more. Implementing new technologies, it inevitably creates this demand for new skills.
Right.
This means upskilling the workforce, potentially turning India into, well, a global talent hub.
That's a really compelling vision. A highly skilled workforce ready to tackle, the challenges of the future. Okay, so we've established the potential impact on, a macro level, but I think our listener would love to hear some real-world examples of how this has actually played out in India.
Sure, let's start with Bangalore. It's often called the Silicon Valley of India.
Oh, yeah?
And its IT boom was, in large part, fueled by embracing those global best practices in software development. They attracted multinational tech companies, built this thriving ecosystem.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Pretty much, yeah.
So from a quiet city to a global tech hub,
Yeah.
that's a pretty powerful testament to the potential of this approach. But Bangalore's success story, it's mostly about the IT sector, right?
Hmm.
Did this model work in other industries?
Absolutely. Look at the e-commerce explosion in India.
Oh, yeah.
Companies like Flipkart and Snapdeal, they didn't just copy Amazon.
Right.
They learned from that global giant, adapted the model to the Indian market, and they ended up revolutionizing the retail landscape.
And not just for businesses, right? Think about the impact on everyday people. Suddenly, millions have access to, like, a wider range of goods, often at lower prices, delivered straight to their doorstep. It's totally transformed the way people shop.
For sure. And let's not forget about the renewable energy sector.
Yeah, good point.
India's made some serious strides in adopting solar and wind technologies from countries like Germany and Denmark.
So another example of taking inspiration but tailoring it to fit India's specific needs. Instead of relying solely on fossil fuels, they're embracing a cleaner and more sustainable path. Now, I know there are more fascinating examples out there, but before we dive in, let's take a moment to kind of digest what we've learned so far.
As we kind of dig deeper into this whole idea of ethical imports, it's important to remember that this isn't like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right, that's a really good point. We can't just assume that, what works in one country is automatically going to be a success in India. There's a real art to adapting these ideas, wouldn't you say?
Precisely. It takes a nuanced understanding of India's specific context, everything from cultural factors and, consumer behavior to the regulatory landscape and existing infrastructure.
So it's kind of like taking a blueprint and modifying it to fit the terrain, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
You might need stronger foundations here, a different kind of roof there, but you're still building upon like a proven concept.
That's a great analogy, and this is where collaboration really becomes so important. Ethical import, it's not just about taking; it's about building those partnerships, sharing knowledge, working together to create solutions that benefit both sides.
So it's about fostering a genuine exchange of ideas, not just like a one-way flow of
Yeah.
technology or business models.
Right, exactly.
But let's be realistic for a second. This approach has got to come with its own set of challenges, right? What are some of the hurdles that companies and entrepreneurs might face when they try to ethically import, these ideas?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is navigating intellectual property rights. Making sure that ideas and technologies are being used with the proper licensing and authorization. That's absolutely crucial.
Of course, yeah. Otherwise, you're running into a whole bunch of legal issues down the road,
Exactly.
right? It's about respecting the originators of those ideas while also making sure that India, benefits from their application. What other potential roadblocks come to mind?
Adapting to cultural differences can be tricky.
Yeah, for sure.
What might be considered, standard practice in one culture might not fly in another.
Oh, absolutely.
Take, for instance, direct marketing strategies. What works in a more individualistic culture, might be perceived as too aggressive, maybe too intrusive in a more collectivist society like India.
So you really need that deep understanding of those cultural nuances to make
Yeah.
sure that those imported ideas actually resonate with the target audience. It's almost
Right.
like translating the concept itself, not just the language.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of regulatory hurdles. Different countries have different laws, different regulations, and navigating those complexities can be a minefield. You need to ensure compliance every step of the way to, avoid legal pitfalls.
It sounds like ethical import really requires this delicate balancing act of like legal expertise, cultural sensitivity, and a good business acumen. It's not exactly a walk in the park.
It definitely demands a thoughtful and strategic approach, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, the potential rewards, they can really outweigh the challenges. When it's done right, ethical import can be a catalyst for innovation, economic growth, societal
So
progress.
about like a high stakes game with the potential for massive payoff if you play your cards right.
Yeah, I like that.
But let's get back to those real-world success stories. We've already talked about Bangalore's IT boom and the e-commerce revolution, but I'm sure there are a ton more examples that demonstrate how ethical imports have really shaped industries and transformed lives in India. Where should we go next on this journey?
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the automotive industry. India has become a major player in vehicle manufacturing, and much of that success can be attributed to, well, the ethical import of, technologies and best practices from global giants.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when I think of cars in India, the first name that pops into my head is Maruti Suzuki.
Yep.
It's a classic example of collaboration, would you say?
Precisely. Maruti Suzuki, it's a joint venture between India's Maruti Udyog Limited and Japan's Suzuki Motor Corporation. And by combining that Japanese engineering expertise with, Indian manufacturing capabilities, they were able to produce, well, affordable and reliable cars that quickly captured a large share of the market.
True win-win, right?
It is.
Suzuki gets access to this vast new market, and India benefits from, the creation of jobs and the development of a domestic automobile industry.
And the impact, it goes beyond Maruti Suzuki. The motorcycle industry also saw a similar transformation.
Mm.
Indian companies like Bajaj Auto, they partnered with global players like KTM to produce these high-performance motorcycles. And what's interesting here is that, these motorcycles, they're not only sold in India, but also exported worldwide.
So it's a two-way street. India is not just importing ideas; it's also exporting its own innovations to the global market.
Exactly. And that's a hallmark of a mature and competitive economy. And this trend, it's only going to accelerate, as India continues to embrace global best practices and invest in research and development.
Okay, so we've seen how ethical imports have really fueled innovation and growth in the tech sector, retail, and automotive. What other areas have been significantly impacted by this approach?
Well, healthcare is another prime example. Consider the adoption of telemedicine technologies.
Yeah, that's a good one.
By importing and adapting these tools, healthcare providers in India are now able to reach patients in remote areas, patients who, previously lacked access to specialized medical care.
That's a real game changer. Suddenly those geographical barriers are no longer an insurmountable obstacle to quality healthcare.
Exactly. It's about bridging the gap, between urban and rural areas and making sure that everyone has a chance to receive the treatment they need. This is a powerful example of how ethical imports can drive, positive social impact alongside economic progress.
For sure.
And it's not just telemedicine. India has also been actively importing, advanced medical equipment and technologies from countries like the U.S. and Germany, and this has led to, well, a significant enhancement in the overall quality of healthcare that's available in the country.
So it's about bringing those latest advancements in medical science to India, giving patients access to, cutting edge treatments and procedures. That's really remarkable.
These examples really highlight how ethical imports can truly make a difference in people's lives. It's not just about these abstract economic concepts. It's about tangible improvements in well-being and quality of life.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is where things get really exciting because there's so much more potential waiting to be unlocked.
I completely agree. And speaking of unlocking potential, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how ethical imports could shape the future of other sectors in India. What are some emerging areas where you see this approach having a significant impact?
One area that holds, I think, immense promise is agriculture.
Oh, interesting.
India's, an agricultural powerhouse, but it faces these challenges related to productivity, sustainability, climate change. By ethically importing and adapting agricultural technologies and practices, from countries like Israel, the Netherlands, the United States, India could really revolutionize its agricultural sector.
That's a really interesting thought. What kind of technologies are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about precision farming techniques that utilize data and sensors to optimize, crop yields, water usage, fertilizer application.
Okay.
We're talking about drought-resistant crops, climate-smart agricultural practices. We're talking about innovative food processing and storage technologies that, reduce waste and enhance food security.
So it's about making Indian agriculture more efficient, more resilient, more sustainable. That's a pretty powerful vision.
And, the benefits, they extend beyond just increasing food production by improving farmer incomes and creating these new opportunities in the agricultural value chain. We can uplift rural communities and contribute to overall economic growth.
It sounds like Like ethical imports in agriculture could be a win-win for both farmers and consumers, leading to a more prosperous and food secure future for India.
Hmm.
Are there any other sectors where you see similar potential?
Another sector that's really ripe for transformation is education.
Oh, okay.
By embracing, online learning platforms, personalized learning technologies, and innovative teaching methodologies, from countries like Finland and Singapore, India can equip its students with the skills they need to thrive in the 21st century.
That's a really crucial point. In a rapidly changing world, education needs to adapt to prepare students for the jobs of the future.
Exactly. And it's not just about, preparing students for jobs. It's about fostering critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving skills, skills that are essential for success in any field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So by carefully selecting and adapting those best educational practices from around the world,
Hmm.
India can create a world-class education system that really empowers its citizens to reach their full potential. It's inspiring to think about the possibilities.
It certainly is. And the beauty of ethical imports is that the potential applications are limitless. We've only just, scratched the surface today. But the key takeaway is that by embracing this approach, India can chart a course towards a brighter future for its people and its economy.
I couldn't agree more. This has been an incredibly insightful conversation, and I'm sure our listeners just buzzing with ideas.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch upon one more crucial aspect of ethical imports. We've talked about the benefits, but it's equally important to address the potential risks and challenges.
You're absolutely right. While ethical imports hold, immense promise, it's essential to approach this strategy with caution and careful consideration.
Okay, let's dive into that. What are some of the potential pitfalls that we need to be aware of?
One of the primary risks is the potential for dependence on foreign companies and technologies.
Mm.
While collaboration is essential, it's crucial to make sure that India doesn't become overly reliant on external sources.
So it's about striking a balance between embracing global expertise and nurturing indigenous innovation. We
Right.
don't want to stifle the growth of homegrown Indian companies' technologies.
Exactly. It's about fostering a healthy ecosystem where both domestic and international players can contribute to India's progress.
Yeah.
Another potential risk is the possibility of, cultural clashes or misaligned values. What might be considered acceptable or ethical in one culture might not be so in another.
That's a crucial point. It's important to make sure that those imported ideas are aligned with Indian values and societal norms.
Hmm.
We don't want to import practices that could have negative social or cultural consequences.
Right. And finally, we need to be, mindful of the potential impact on employment.
Oh, of course.
While new technologies and industries can create jobs, they can also lead to, job displacement in certain sectors.
So it's important to kind of anticipate these shifts in the job market and invest in reskilling and upskilling programs to make sure that workers are prepared for the changing demands of the economy. Essentially, we need to be uh, proactive in mitigating any potential negative consequences.
Exactly. Ethical imports offer, tremendous opportunities, but they also require careful planning, thoughtful implementation, and a commitment to responsible and sustainable development. It's not simply about importing ideas; it's about importing them wisely and ethically.
That's a perfect note to end on. Ethical imports are a powerful tool for progress, but they need to be wielded with care and foresight. It's about choosing the right ideas,
Mm.
adapting them thoughtfully, and making sure that they contribute to a better future for all Indians. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts and wrap up this deep dive, let's take a quick pause to reflect on what we've learned so far. So we've really covered a lot in this deep dive, exploring how these ethical idea imports can drive progress in India, from manufacturing and healthcare to agriculture and education. I mean, the potential just seems vast.
What's really exciting is that we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
As India keeps integrating with that global economy, the opportunities for ethical imports, they're only going to multiply.
And as we've been talking about, it's not just about, bringing those ideas in.
Right.
It's about adapting them to the Indian context,
Right.
fostering that collaboration,
Hmm.
mitigating the potential risks.
Precisely. Ethical imports, They're a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process, learning, adapting, innovating.
And that process requires participation from everyone involved.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
policymakers, businesses, entrepreneurs, citizens,
Oh,
everyone.
absolutely. It's a collective effort, demands vision, strategic thinking, commitment to building a better future for India.
Speaking of vision, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to get your thoughts on the long-term implications of ethical imports for India. Where do you see this journey leading?
I really believe ethical imports have the power to propel India to the forefront of the global economy.
Wow.
By strategically leveraging that global knowledge, that innovation, India can become a leader in key sectors, drive that sustainable development, create a more prosperous and equitable society.
That's a powerful vision. And
Yeah.
it's not just about like economic growth, right? It's about improving the lives of millions of Indians.
Precisely. Ethical imports can play this transformative role in addressing those critical challenges. Poverty, healthcare access, education inequality. By embracing this approach, India can create a future where every citizen has the opportunity to thrive.
It's inspiring to think about the possibilities, but as we've discussed, realizing this vision requires careful planning, thoughtful implementation.
Absolutely. Ethical imports, they're not like a magic bullet. They're a tool that needs to be used wisely and responsibly. Making informed choices, considering those long-term consequences, and ensuring that those imported ideas really serve the best interests of India and its people.
And that brings us to the most important question of all. What can our listener do to contribute to this journey?
Ooh, that's a great question. I encourage our listeners to stay informed about those global trends, explore those new ideas, and think critically about how those ideas could be adapted to create positive change in their own communities and industries. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or just a concerned citizen, everyone has a role to play in shaping the future of India.
So it's about embracing a mindset of curiosity, innovation, collaboration.
Hmm.
It's about looking beyond our borders for that inspiration
Hmm.
and finding ways to make those ideas work for India.
Exactly. Ethical imports are not just about borrowing ideas, they're about sparking new ideas, fostering creativity, and building a more vibrant and dynamic India. The future is full of possibilities, and I'm excited to see what we can achieve together.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of ethical idea imports.
It's been my pleasure.
We hope this conversation has sparked your imagination and inspired you to think about the transformative power of ideas. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries of what's possible.